Let me tell you a story. A founder replaced his entire marketing department that was making him millions of dollars a year and replaced it with AI. And I asked him, what was this groundbreaking reality that he had just realized that made him do it? Guess what it was? It was ChatGPT's advice. Now, this guy isn't an idiot. He is doing exactly what every single AI influencer on every single platform that you go to is telling you. Come in Claude, get the prompt, and replace X, Y, and Z. The man who told me this story builds the exact tools that all of these AI influencers are telling you is going to replace whoever the founder hates. He's built 38 different marketing skills for Claude Code, 30,000 people using his marketing skills every single day. And he tells me two things that completely blew my mind. Number one, that most AI companies out there are trying to solve problems that do not exist, and they're wasting billions. And the second, that AI hallucinations, that if you go on TechCrunch today, the world will tell you is the biggest problem in AI at the moment, is actually the flaws of your company being reflected by AI back to you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Corey Haines. Enjoy this episode, and I'll see you very soon. It would be amazing if you know anything about marketing and AI and you don't know Corey Haines. So Corey, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Okay. So obviously Corey is somebody who built I think the most popular repo when it comes to marketing skills on Claude Code.
I think maybe one of the only ones for marketing too.
Absolutely. So you definitely know what you're talking about. So let's get into the weeds of it and try to understand the repo that you built automates 37, 38 tasks, maybe even functions within a marketing team. It's a humongous task to take on. And there's a lot of assumptions that you had, processes that you built to get to that level of automation. Walk me through what is an assumption that teams make right now with the skills that you've built, that they assume X can happen because I used Corey Haines' marketing repo, but in actuality, that's really not happening.
Yeah, I think one of the big confusion points is that people think magically that Claude is just going to connect to data sources or their tools without them authenticating, or I don't know. I really don't understand how they expect this to happen, but there will be a skill like the SEO audit, for example. And they're like, so I just tell it my URL and then it does the audit. Like, well, not really. No, you have to connect your website so that it can actually see under the hood, what's happening. Same thing for content strategy. I just give it this and then it does keyword research for me. And no, Claude doesn't do keyword research for you. You can kind of guess, but you can connect an API for data for SEO, for Ahrefs, for SEMrush, whatever you want to. And then the skill will use that tool to do the keyword research. Otherwise, again, Claude is going to be guessing, and then you have to verify that data. I mean, it could go on and on. It's for paid ads. They're oh, so this just manages my ads for me? And yes, if you connect your ads manager, but there's just a lot of connections that have to be made, a lot of integrations. That's as an aside. Probably the biggest problem that we're solving with Magister is people just don't realize, okay, in order for me to connect this tool, I have to grab an API key. I need to use the CLI and log in. I need to use this MCP, all these different tools have different ways to integrate with them. But the skills themselves are only limited to how much access you give them to your tools and to your repos, to your source of truth, wherever that might be.
Is there a wacky message that you got from a founder based on your skills, hey, so basically I don't need a CMO anymore, right? Or I don't need X person within their team. Give me a story of when that kind of a message arrives to you. What was that incident, and then how do you navigate that? Because right now I feel like a lot of teams are both underestimating and overestimating the capabilities of something like a Claude Code or OpenClaw or Claude Cowork. I mean, there are a million tools at this point. So yeah, give me an instance of when that happened.
Yeah, I mean, we had an incident fairly recently where, so I have a marketing agency as well called Conversion Factory. work with a lot of SaaS and tech companies. And so this guy came to us. He was a technical founder, built a dev tool that was doing fairly well. And so he was like, hey, I just raised a new round. I need help with marketing. I don't know what to do. We don't have a marketing team. I need someone to come in and, provide all the expertise. So we said, that's great. We always start with an audit. We do a 99-point checklist across all of your marketing vectors. And, we'll go through the line, tell you what you're doing well, what you're not doing well, and then provide a big list of recommended actions. And we essentially build a marketing plan out of that. So we did the audit for him, and he's like, oh, this is great. Let's schedule a call to talk about it. And we can talk about next steps and how to build an engagement together. Hop on the call. And he's like, hey, so yeah, while you guys were doing the audit, I was working on some agents, and I've really made some big breakthroughs in AI. And so I'm not going to hire you guys anymore. And I think that you guys should probably rethink your business model because everyone else is keep doing this too. And also I was wondering if I could use your guys' IP to train my AI agents to sell it to other marketing agencies to sell to their clients. And we were like, first of all, like marketing skills is open source. So like there's no IP to license. And second of all, you're telling us that we're going to go out of business, but then your assumption is you're going to build a product for marketing agencies to use your tech on their clients. So which is it? Is it marketing agency or not? Third of all, how dare you? But fourth of all, like, oh, and then he was like, oh, just let me show you. Let me share my screen. So he shares the screen and he pulls up Claude Code and I was like, look how amazing this is. And he switches to his localhost and it's a slide deck. And it's just a sales deck that Claude Code made. We're like, this is the big breakthrough in AI and AI marketing that you're talking about. Like, he was just clueless and like really, really overestimating. And so more or less, we had to kind of tell him to get lost and good luck, best of luck to you, but it's not going to work out. But, I think the lesson there is like, yeah, there's definitely a lot of people that overestimate. Like I said, they're either underestimating or overestimating. There's a lot of people that are overestimating because they think that they can automate marketing with AI. I don't think that anybody's goal should or would be to automate. What you want is to do more with less, faster. So you still need someone to be a human in the loop. You still need someone in the driver's seat to manage the agents, to tell the AI agents what to do. Like at the very best, yes, you can do a lot. You can do a lot with the skills. When you bring in all of your integrations, our vision and dream for Magister is that it's this hosted OpenClaw with marketing skills and all the integrations you need to just plug and play and start doing things for you without having to use the terminal or go grab API keys or whatever it is. But you still need someone to be managing that. It's not going to be automated. It's not going to be completely out of mind. You need to keep an eye on it. You need to be giving it the right info. You need to be keeping it within the guardrails.
But, just to go to the other side of the spectrum, which is, what do you feel like Claude Code has been able to do better than what maybe you as a marketer within your agency or other marketers that you've seen, where the capability of Claude Code sort of exceeded the benchmark of what you've seen a human being capable of doing?
Okay, I'll give you a couple instances. One thing that I found surprisingly well is keyword research, because the way that human being does keyword research is we go look through competitors, maybe do some brainstorming on like, maybe these are potential keywords for me to target. We have these like keyword seeding, we call it, where we'll build a list and then plug it into Ahrefs and then see what the keyword data is. But a lot of it kind of random. You're throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing, okay, is there search volume around this? Is there search volume around this? Is this relevant? Is this not relevant? What should I be targeting? And that takes a long time. And at best, usually, you could spend hours doing it and still only find like 20, 30% of all the keywords that you could or should be targeting for your business. AI is incredible at it because it can very easily generate all the keywords that you should be potentially looking into. It's amazing at keyword seeding. And then it can plug in those keywords into a tool like Ahrefs or Data for SEO, grab all the keyword volume data, organize it, synthesize it, dedupe it, put them into clusters, and then have like a total picture of what your keyword research strategy should be within a few minutes. Like we're talking like 5 minutes compared to like days of work. And there's been times where, I've worked on a client, let's just say for 2 years, and we've gone through multiple rounds of keyword research. And then I plugged it into Claude Code and used the marketing skills and gave it access to Data for SEO. And all of a sudden it has a list of 50 new keywords for us to target that I never would have considered. Like, oh, well, that's useful. I don't know if I ever would have found those. And now these are net new opportunities for us. Another example is a lot of really tedious things like the SEO audit. The SEO audit goes through hundreds and hundreds of checkpoints and little optimizations, tweaks, things that are missing, things that need to be added to your website that, again, could literally take someone months to go through and do. I remember actually one of my first things I did as a junior marketing intern at my first startup I worked for was I had to go in and find every image that had a missing alt tag and give it a alt description. I mean, that took me like a few weeks just to go through and do that. AI with Claude Code and the SEO audit skill, you plug in your GitHub repo and you've got a full comprehensive audit and all the fixes within minutes. I mean, that's another thing that I've just been like, whoa, that blows me away. One more example for you. One thing I found recently is it's really, really good at cross-referencing data. I'm actually not a huge data guy. Analytics has always been a part of me that's like, it's like a means to an end. It's a necessary evil. I don't love going through spreadsheets and, filtering and overlaying and doing pivot tables and all that kind of stuff. And so one day I was like, I wonder if Claude can if I just give it my Google Analytics, my Google Search Console, my Google Ads, my Fathom, my Post Hog, if I just gave it all the data sources, what kind of connections and correlations could it find? Turns out a ton. Like, this is stuff that I don't think a human can do, actually. Like, you'd have to really, really spend a lot of time thinking hard and like visually comparing charts to be like, that's interesting. This correlates really highly. This doesn't correlate very highly. We're talking about like sales numbers, sign up numbers, traffic from different sources, different entry points. I thought it was really incredible. I mean, one of the things that I showed me for one of my SaaS products, TrueList, it did an overlay between Google Ads, Google Search Console, Trefs, and Fathom, which is what I use for web analytics. And it basically built a whole model to show how the different traffic sources between paid and organic were converting day by day over time, right? So I knew, okay, this surge of signups was related to this one Google ad. This surge of signups was related to this one campaign that we did for the sponsorship. This surge of signups was related to, you can go through the line there. I was like, that I never would have been able to do that by myself.
I also think, like, to the other side, what it's really horrible at is subjective analysis of, yes. So I'll give you an example. Like, there was a startup I was working with, and essentially what happened is they had a ton of signups. Now, the data is showcasing that this particular startup had a lot of signups because there was a lot of social media traffic. But what it was not able to is it had nothing to do with the product. It had nothing to do with the company. It was just a funny picture of the founder that sort of became a meme and then spiraled, and then people got really interested in the product, and then they discovered it, and then they signed up for it because it was also something that was solving a particular pain point. Now, this is like a uncanny, or like a, let's say, unaltruistic connection that probably AI wouldn't have been able to do. Obviously, it's a part of the analysis bit within the skills as well. What I wanted to ask you is, when these uncanny connections are coming up, is there a skill somebody can build to look for these outlier signals with the subjective data, especially the qualitative data that somebody's getting?
I wouldn't say that it's a skill per se, but again, I think it comes down to your integrations and data sources. So again, another thing that we're building into Magister is like alert monitoring, brand alert monitoring. So you can see what, web mentions, social media mentions, as well as prompt tracking. So you can see like influxes or increases in rankings for prompts, and also maybe surges in prompt searches. Essentially, like, there might be things that you become aware of because someone told you, because you monitor Twitter, because, you're looking through Slack and you're kind of racking your brain for like, what are all the things that we did the last couple of weeks that might be connected to that? But if you can give AI the same access to all those things, those streams of information, there's no reason why it can't. It's just a matter of actually piping that in. Now, a skill, this whole like skill paradigm is very interesting because I think that people have different ideas of what a skill is. For example, in Magister, we're building this whole feature around what we're calling workflows. And a workflow under the hood is a skill. because a skill is just a hard-coded prompt that you're giving the AI that has this repeatable guardrails. It's an SOP, right? So the skill for the workflow is step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3, do this, step 4, do that, and then run this on a schedule. So sure, maybe there's a skill where every day you have it go search all of your data sources, you have it scan through Slack, you have it scan through email, you have it scan through any brand mentions online, and then you try to collate that into something related to a surge in signups or some sort of anomaly within your data. 100% possible. That's not a skill that I've built today. Maybe it's something that is coming down the pipeline, but you could also build a skill around that, because a skill is just a markdown file and anybody can build it or fork off of an existing one and customize it for themselves.
The sort of counter question I have to that is I've tried to build something similar in terms of taking multiple data sources and using something like a brand 24 report that gets generated weekly. The AI picks it up from the email directly and then, is sort of using that data. The challenge for creative marketer or maybe a social media manager is it's not as simple as brand mentions, because a lot of the data that they're getting is just keyword based. So it takes in keywords, it's analyzing if the mentions are there, if the brands, is it increasing, decreasing, some bit of sentiment analysis as well. Although I feel like there isn't really a truly good sentiment analysis tool other than, just getting a report and then you sort of sitting down and analyzing whether the sentiment was positive, negative, so on and so forth. Because sometimes somebody can use foul language, but in a good way. Yeah, I cannot understand sarcasm sometimes. So, there's this really tricky back and forth of how much of what I'm getting from the AI in terms of the reporting am I actually tangibly using in strategy. Although I will say this is an edge case. Probably this isn't like a widespread thing, but I definitely think like the analysis of what is good quality and if it's purely based on quantitative data. So this got X number of likes, X number of engagements, X number of reposts, without the subjective analysis of why really that happens. That is where a lot of the challenges come in. So when somebody's facing something like that, maybe a client comes to you and they're looking at, okay, how can I ace my social media game using your skills? Or how can I get better at content writing or analyzing the content and social media? How do you tackle a challenge like that?
Well, how I think about it is I really don't draw a big distinction between human creativity and AI creativity, because I don't know if you read this book, but there's a book called Steal Like an Artist by this guy named Austin Kleon, I believe it is.
Yep.
It's a really, really good book. There's a little YouTube video and a couple other things out there that are in the same vein of everything is a remix. And like as humans, one of the things that we do is we mimic and we remix, we recreate what others have done. AI is actually the most ultimate extreme manifestation of that, right? Where it's modeled after human behavior. And so everything that it generates is supposed to mimic or replicate something that a human has done in the past. And so when we talk about like AI isn't creative, well, what it's mimicking maybe isn't that creative to you, but that doesn't mean that it's not creative or that it can't be, or that it can't portray something that seems creative, original, authentic, so on and so forth. And that's kind of where a skill comes in, because how I've been explaining it to people is that every model that comes out, when they improve it, how they do that is they go through these fine tunings where they use thousands of people to manually look through the outputs and then give feedback to the AI on how to tweak certain weights of a model to get more consistent outputs that we deem subjectively as better. And then those get rolled into something that generally produces a better output on average for the model. And then we keep doing that over and over and over again. But still, there's a lot of bad data, a lot of mediocre content that it's going to be trained on that is kind of weighing down, it's pulling the average output quality down in the model. What a skill does is it sort of helps the AI to stick towards the top end of the quality of the output of that model. So when you tell it, don't do all these things, those are all things associated with bad outputs of the model. Only do these things. These are things that are usually associated with good outputs of the model. Now we're kind of pulling the average of the model output up again. Okay, so back to the original question on like social media content, for example, the answer isn't to try to create some sort of skill or prompt that teaches the AI how to be creative, original, authentic, more human. The way that I would approach it is, how do we mimic examples that to me seem creative, original, authentic, off the beaten path, for example. And a lot of that comes down to, let's just go find posts that I think are original or that sort of are tangentially related, adjacent, close to the output that I want. And let me start to train my model and build a skill around doing something like this. I've built in my own model my own Claude with my own social content strategy skill. I've basically trained it on all of my tweets, my data, my outputs. So now when I ask it to make a new announcement for a marketing skills update, it knows exactly how to write it, what to do, and it nails it every single time. And so I'm working with a new client. They're like, how do I up my social media game? Well, let's find some posts that have done well for you. Let's find some posts that have done well for other people that are close to what you want to do. And let's start to build a skill and train the model on what that output looks like so we can get those results more consistently.
Do you feel like if, let's say, everybody starts doing this, so in a, let's say, alternate universe, although I don't think this is happening anytime soon, but let's say that is the case, and a lot of people start doing that, where good quality content, or let's say subjective analysis of what looks like good quality content to human beings, we build a skill for that, we start using it, we start creating good output, and then that gives us a result. Like, that gives us a good result because it's been trained on good data and we've put our subjective analysis in it. The challenge with that, to my mind, is the more people that start doing this, it sort of becomes a diminishing utility loop of the more people do it, the less it really gives you the kind of output or outcome that you really want. Like, if I look at a really cool blog post on Twitter and that article does amazingly well and gets a lot of engagement, now 1,000 other people look at it, build a skill based on that, and then all of them are producing content like that. At some point or the other, this is where the challenge of building content through AI versus the algorithm that is also fighting the AI content actively comes in. So when people are thinking about that, because this is like a real challenge, people are thinking, especially creative marketers or content marketers are thinking like, okay, where is the edge? Am I always going to be playing this game of cat and mouse of, okay, I built great output, now it's done really well, and now I have to like over innovate on top of it because now 1,000 people are going to use this as a basis to build an AI model. What are your what's your POV on that?
Yeah, I mean, you can't always just be remixing what other people have done and trying to follow the tried and true playbook and template. It's this barbell strategy of 80% of the time, I'm going to be doing what I think is tried and true and works, and it's going to be rinse and repeat. 20% of the time, I'm going to be experimenting with new things, and probably, if it's 20%, 8 or 19 out of those 20 times that I'm testing something new, it's going to completely flop. And maybe 1 or 2 times it's going to work just as well as what I was working before, or maybe even better. And then I'm going to take that and I'm going to rinse and repeat that. And you kind of keep going through that cycle of, I have what's working, but then I'm also trying new things and trying to find this new alpha, right, to explore. Because you're right. Yeah. And this happens in marketing all the time. Once someone talks about a playbook that works really well, everybody starts doing it and then it stops working well. And then some other guy figures out something that works well, starts talking about online. Everybody starts doing that. And then guess what? It doesn't work well. This is just how markets work, right? It's market saturation. Yep. So you're always trying to find the edge. You're always trying to find the delta. There's something that's going to give you some kind of advantage. And then you're going to exploit it for as much as you can for as long as you can until it stops working. But you still have other irons in the fire, still working on new experimental things. It's the zig when others zag, right? A lot of marketing comes down to everybody's doing hyper designed, super professional looking websites. Now I'm going to do more goofy, cartoony, whimsical websites. Everybody's doing whimsical, cartoony. Now I'm going to go back the other way, and the pendulum keeps swinging back and forth.
I think that's probably where the human in the loop comes in, right? And you've obviously spoken about this as well, where like it's always where maybe you were doing all of this on your own and there was no way to either operationalize it or get feedback on it or a tool that could do it faster. Now you do have that. And that's just going to allow you to, where you were experimenting maybe with 2 things, now you can do it with 20, maybe even 200, right? So just
Mm-hmm.
the number of shots at the goal increase. I love that. One thing correlated to that though is, and I would love to know from somebody who's built different Claude skills, how do you manage context rot? Like, how do you manage when you have a lot of data to give to a Claude Code? How does somebody ensure that nothing gets lost and they're managing the data properly, tagging it properly, using it properly?
Mm-hmm. This is an interesting one because I'm not convinced that it's a huge problem today. I was one of the OG vibe coders. Like when I did a coding boot camp almost 3 years ago, it was there that I discovered Cursor. Was button mashing accept all, just like, sure, let's do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. So like I've seen all the iterations of the AI coding tools, the different methods. There was cursor rules, now there's skills. It was accept all, now there's bypass permissions, the context windows, the compacting, right? I think ultimately this is a problem that is not going to exist in the near future. And I'm not even convinced that it's really even a huge problem today. The mistakes people make with it potentially is that they over rely on memory of a chat. And so you might say, let's work on A, B, and C. And then you say, great, let's start working on A. And then like days later, you're like, let's work on B now. And it's like, what's B? Now you're all mad. You're like, huh? What do you mean? Oh, the AI is stupid. It's like, well, okay, maybe you shouldn't rely on the memory to do that. Maybe just, I don't know, save your plan as a markdown file and then be like, now let's go work on B. It's in this markdown file. Great. Like, I don't know. It's not like a huge problem in my view. It's just people, again, maybe underestimating and overestimating AI. In this way, they're overestimating the memory and they need to take more measures to make sure that AI doesn't forget things that are important. There's best practices too, where, okay, you can clear the context, you can compact it. If you're working something completely new, yeah, wipe your context, clear it out so that you have room for new things that it's loading in. I don't even do this that often. I mean, I have probably 20 terminal chats open with Claude Code on different projects. And for the most part, I just kind of keep rolling through the next. If I'm really working on something that's like brand new, yeah, I'll do /clear. And then it just clears the context window. I start working on a new project. It loads in the context for that. But I also think that it's been pretty darn good without me doing anything fancy.
It's almost ironical to think about how AI can be just as human as the human being sometimes. The other thing that I wanted to understand a little bit better is when all of the skills that you've built and you face the issue with, it's giving you output that looks amazing on the face of it, but isn't exactly what you want. Like, it just looks good. Somebody who is not maybe aware about the exact purpose of that output. So let's say it's done keyword research and it looks really good. And now I can use this on I can use it to build a website and so on and so forth and call other skills. But really, there was a flaw in it or there was something wrong with it. And there's this almost analysis of degradation on the back end, but on the face of it, it looks amazing. Has that ever happened with while you were building the skills? Maybe you were doing this for a client. When you hit a roadblock like that, you recognize it, but the client doesn't. And maybe they're doing it on their own and they come back to you and say, oh, no, this is all done. When you face a case like that, how do you manage it? How can somebody ensure that the quality, the output that they're getting is actually good quality and not just what looks good?
Yeah. Well, the easy answer is just review it yourself. But I think we're all like, we're going to do that. So what can we do beyond that? I actually save my manual review until like the end of my checks and balances of what I'm checking for quality stuff. So for example, something I was doing recently was I was doing some content refreshes for a couple of blog posts that I'm trying to get to rank higher in Google. And so instead of me being like, hey, Claude, rewrite this, make it rank higher, and then like looking over it, I'm running it through a couple of skills. I'm running it through copy editing. I'm giving a contest to Google Search Console, having it do keyword research, having it look at comparable posts, and then I'm having it build a plan, and then I'm going to watch it implement that plan. I'm going to have it review the implementation. I'm probably also going to loop in Codex and have it use my Codex skill to do a second opinion, a second pair of eyes. There's a couple out there. Like there's this woman, Catherine Lavery, she made one called the Codex skill that allows you to loop in Codex in Claude Code. This guy, Aaron Francis, made one called the Council and it brings in Codex, Gemini,
Grok,
and one
Claude,
other, I think. Yeah, Grok.
Grok, I think.
So
Yeah.
like, yeah, you can get a couple other models to do another review because they're all different and excel in different areas to catch things that you didn't. I usually also have it use like the agent browser to actually like take screenshots, review the thing, try to view it through the lens of like what I'm looking for. You can use the product marketing context skill to be like, just by the way, make sure that this is all in line with my ICP, my differentiators, how we're trying to compete against competitors, business model, false claims, things like that. And then I'll do my manual review. I do think that a lot of these problems, when it's like hallucinating or false positives, false negatives, are essentially process issues. That to me signals that there was some kind of check, there was some kind of toll gate that got skipped or that wasn't up to snuff. And so you need to improve your process rather than like being angry at the AI or just spending more time manually reviewing it. And skills as well, there's these things called evals now, where you can also tell the AI, like, this is what a good output looks like, and this is the level of quality that I expect, and here are examples. So that way, when it outputs something, it can eval itself and then try to catch things that maybe it missed before. And I will see that kind of often where it's like, oh, oops, forgot this thing. Let me go back and fix that. Or this was a hallucination. I need to go and fix this claim of what the product can do. So yeah, it's a process issue. I don't think it's a
Makes sense. But how are you figuring out, like, let's say I'm giving an example of, oh, I love these 3 blogs, right? Is it that I have to almost quantify what is good about them, like what good looks like, and really granularly break it down? And that is how you get good output? Or is it that the AI is sort of running it through multiple scenarios to figure out, okay, they might have liked, because it also has context on your taste as you use it more and more, like, oh, they might have liked this for that and this for that and this for that. So whatever future content I write, I'm probably going to use this as a benchmark. Would you say that that is the way to do it?
Yeah, this is interesting because I don't know. It's always interesting to hear about like how other people use AI or what they think it can or can't do. So for example, like, I don't do either of those. I wouldn't ever tell AI, these are blog posts that I like, mirror those. And I also wouldn't explicitly name what I like about the blog posts and tell it to do that. Because I know from my own experience that if I don't tell it what I like about the blog posts, that it's just going to come to its own conclusions. And those conclusions could be completely wrong compared to what I want out of it. But also, if I tell it what I'm expecting, I could also be missing things that I'm not accounting for that it might find or do that I actually want it to do. I just don't know that I want it to do it yet. So usually when I'm giving instructions to AI, I first start with, hey, these are a couple of examples. Let's first tease out what would be useful for us to take from these blog posts, analyze it thoroughly for structure, for word count, for information hierarchy, examples, so on and so forth. Build your own rubric and then get back to me on what you think these blog posts do well so that we can consider it for our content refreshes. So now I'm telling it how to help me tell it what to take from those blog posts to incorporate into my own. And I'm not limiting it to what I think it should do. And I'm also not letting it use its own judgment and potentially miss what I want it to do.
So you're almost like temperature controlling, the amount of wiggle room it has. So ensure that it follows the path. Makes sense. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of like, this is just the way that I've used to learn AI in general. I've seen this a lot with the skills in particular, where people think the skills are like this magic shortcut in cheat code. And they're like, okay, so I just tell it to use the skill. And then what happens? Like, well, have you ever looked at the skill? Just read through the markdown doc. Like, this is not, it's there. You can just read it and then you'll know what it's doing. Like, someone the other day asked me like, when I tell it to use the product marketing context skill, like, what is it doing? Is it just going and looking at my website? And I said, no, it's doing everything in the product marketing context skill. You can see the steps all in there. Like, it's not just this magical, mysterious process. And anyways, I'm going on a tangent, sorry. But my point is that people use skills sometimes and they're like, just use the skill. They just tell Claude, use the product marketing context skill. So AI is going to do its best and fill in the blanks, whatever you want to. How I normally use skills is I'll say, let's download the skill, install it. And then I ask Claude, how should I use this skill? Tell me about the skill. How does it work? Based on everything you know about me, how should I consider using this skill for myself? I'm trying to delegate the thought process
Mm.
of making the most of the skill to AI and then using that as the instructions for how to use the skill. So the answer is like, it's both, right? You need to be prescriptive about how AI should be doing something, but I'm going to use AI to build the instructions for how the AI should do that thing.
It's a good hack, definitely. I do it too, especially when there are like multiple steps within the kind of output that I want to get. I always ask it, like, how are you going to approach it? What kind of information do you need? And how should I process it? Yeah. Any, like, let's say, best practices on when you're using multiple connectors and there is a lot of context coming in that might also be conflicting with each other in some way. Any sort of best practices on how to manage that? Or is it just like if you have clarity on how each piece is being used, you won't get into trouble?
Do you have an example of like a conflict that might come up or
Oof.
something that might be because like I don't really know if I could come up with something where maybe it was conflicting advice or conflicting data or conflicting connector.
Yeah, maybe it's like, let's say I have two CRMs that I'm using. All right. Now, both of them have different criteria of how they rate a lead or score a lead. So they have both, they, they have different scoring systems. Now, if I'm putting it in to figure out what exactly fits within my ICP, it has conflicting data points on maybe the same lead, but you have two different scores for that. So that's
Mhm.
like a conflicting data on which score is it supposed to follow, and then which data point does it decide, okay, no, actually CRM 1 was right and 2 was wrong. So yeah, something like that.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, maybe your first problem is you have two CRMs. You just need one. Yeah, but I understand what you mean when you're like, okay, let's just take web analytics. Fathom is telling me one thing. Um, Google Analytics is telling me another. Google Search Console is telling me another. That does happen, and I do think that that's actually kind of an interesting use case where you again let AI do the work of figuring out these discrepancies. Why are these different? What could be the explanation? Is there something? Is
Hmm.
some kind of issue or um, missing uh, consideration? Maybe the implementation is wrong. Ultimately, I do think that you kind of need a single source of truth to rely on for your AI, and then you're running with it directionally. You're not relying on it to be like exactly 100% accurate, but you know that, within a 10% error margin, it's pretty much good enough. And that's the best that you can do. You could also just tell AI, hey, this might not be 100% accurate, or there might be things that we aren't considering. We can't take this as like the end all be all. You have to take everything with a little bit of skepticism and a grain of salt.
Any tips on like having more clarity in yourselves when you're using AI? Because I feel like that's such a basic thing, but I feel like nobody taught it. Like nobody told you like, hey, having extreme clarity on what you're doing, how you're doing it, how you achieve a certain outcome, and what good quality looks like on that isn't something that a lot of people think that deeply about, but it's like extremely crucial. And I know you obviously have some best practices on it, so I'd love to know like how do you keep clarity when you're building these skills, these tools, these processes, workflows?
Yeah, this is where I think the human judgment comes in to know really well how much is too much for an AI to try to bite off at one time, how to split up and chunk work together, how to organize all the things that you're doing. For example, like when I sit down to build a new app, I usually start with like a very high level overview. I'll start with like a PRD outline kind of document that's like, look, this is the big picture. This is the end goal. This is what the user should be able to do. This is the type of user. These are like the general flows, the general feature set. But then I'm not going to tell AI, now build this app. I'm going to be like, okay, now let's build a plan. What is the order of operations? What are the most important things for us to build? What are the things we should consider building later? Let's build these one at a time. Let's split them up into issues and then let's build branches for each of them. Make sure that we have good process for like PR to merge and development and then to merge into main and then clean up the issue and then write notes and do your release notes and all that kind of stuff. And that's just going to be a lot of judgment on the human level of because AI will tell you because it's trained on, on the corpus data, like, oh, this feature is probably like 3 months of work. And then you're like, nope, you're going to do it right now because okay, this is enough for the AI to bite off. It can definitely tackle this, but in its the way that it's translating thing is in terms of human outputs and rate and speed, right? Not the AIs. So you have to have that knowledge of, okay, this feature is probably something that it can do like right here. This other one, maybe we should split into two. We should do part one now, part two later. But that's, yeah, kind of just a judgment thing. Again, it goes back to like managing our context window and your context rot. That's kind of a little bit of a judgment thing on what's important to be in context and what's not. Splitting things up is definitely important, even just being on different branches. If you're going to open
Mm.
up the SEO audit and start the SEO audit, have it start implementing on a branch and then merge up the chain. And that way you have this paper trail of all the different changes and updates that you made. And so it's not going to conflict with anything else that you're working on in parallel. Does that answer your
Yeah.
question?
No, absolutely. I just feel like it's seldom talked about. So few people really talk about first having clarity of your own and then using the AI like a sparring partner, not just an executor, to really get the
Yeah.
best quality output out of it. I think that is a core thing a lot of people miss. Okay, final question for you, Corey, is where do you feel that no matter how much AI progresses within the marketing function, human judgment will always be necessary and never get replaced by AI?
Never replaced by AI. Well, I do kind of feel like the final frontier is humor because it's so cultural, contextual, subjective. Like it's just one of those things that is not, it's universal in that everybody has a sense of humor, but it's so not universal in the sense that everyone has a different sense of humor, different background, different things that they think are funny or not funny. And so that's one of the things that I think AI just will always have a hard time with, especially, I know it's a very relational thing too. Who are you trying to be funny with and why is it funny? And the callbacks, the context of the conversation, how much is too much? I don't know if that's super interesting though. I do feel like for the most part, everything is going to be done with AI. There's not going to be a single thing that is, just human made or just handmade or done without AI, because that would be like doing something on the internet without a computer. Like it's just one of our basic tools now at this point. And there's no reason. I was at a conference, we were talking about this, like someone was like, "Oh, should my differentiator be that, we don't use AI?" It's like, why would anybody care about that? I don't care if you
Yep.
use AI. If the product is good, if it works, if your marketing is cool, convincing, clear, if it's educating, nobody actually cares if it's AI. And someone was like, "Oh, but if I'm writing blog posts and, shouldn't it be like from me?" Like, yeah, but think about the way that we used to write without AI before. You would outline and brainstorm and you would go look at other people's blog posts and you would just sit there and ponder, and like you can still do all those things with AI, help you build an outline, help you clarify your thoughts, and then you can write it yourself. Does that mean that AI wrote it? No, but AI is always going to be a part of the picture. And I think that we're just scratching the surface on a lot of things that we could never do before that now we can with AI. And a lot of the things that AI can do way better than us. You know what I mean? Like the conversation has kind of always been like, well, what are the things that AI can do now that I could do previously? But now the conversation is, what are all the things that there's no way that I could do that AI can do now? I don't know if you saw, there was Andre Karpathy came out with this auto research tool that you give an agent this quantifiable output metric, and then it can go through and like experiment and do things to try to increase that metric, and it'll keep going through that loop over and over again. That's something that like we're just not going to be able to do. It's sort of like A/B testing for everything. No one's going to have the brain power, the manpower, the muscle, the time to do that effectively. So there's a lot of things now that like, I don't know, the conversation isn't even to me like what's going to be used with AI, what isn't. It's like what everything's going to be used with AI, or we're going to use AI with everything. And there's going to be things that AI does that we don't do. And that's more interesting to me.
Well, this was really fun, Corey. Thank you so much for taking out the time. I think to everyone, Corey's repo, magistrate, and conversion factory will be linked down below. So please go check it out. Go work with Corey. Although he's quite the busy man. I don't know if you get a hold of him or not, but definitely do go connect with him. He's a absolutely maestro when it comes to knowledge on all of these things. I definitely learned quite a bit. Thanks for doing this, Corey.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Awesome. See you in the next episode. See you and bye bye.